taxes. And the PTA helped support that. And, I have to thank my new friends from Ohio. Really quickly, just serendipitously, last night I came in and I'm in the lobby just trying to collect myself. I had been traveling all day. I was in Washington all last week. I've been on the road for the last couple of weeks. And these women kept coming over to me, offering me cake. Very random, very weird. Each one of them separately, please come have a cake. Would you like to join us for cake? They had no idea who I was. And then finally I asked them, are you guys just traveling with Kate? And they thought about it and they said, yes, we do. Thank you. The cake was amazing. The conversation was even better. And they've adopted me. So I have people from Connecticut and people from Ohio bookending me. I think I want to start with a story, just to tell you a little bit about who I am and help you understand why I truly appreciate and understand the commitment of parent-teacher organizations. I was raised by my grandmother my whole life. Well, not my whole life, my middle years. My mother was an incredible mother, very supportive, very domestic, a wonderful mother until the point where she wasn't. My mother struggled with addiction in my middle years, and my brother and I went to live with my grandmother, who was also raising my 3 cousins. So the 5 of us lived in this home. And my grandmother was a tremendous provider. She took care of us, she cared about us, she worked very hard to support us. And when it came to school though, my grandmother just said 2 things to us. Don't let me get a call from the school. And don't bring home any bad grades. That was the extent of her involvement in school. And we knew exactly what that meant. So none of us ever got calls home from school, and none of us ever brought home bad grades. And I thought that that was enough. That what my grandmother was doing for us in relationship to school was enough. Until the day where I overheard my teacher tell another teacher that my grandmother didn't care about me. You can imagine how that felt. It was the night before was parents' night, and we used to put all of our work in a folder for our parents to take with them when they came to visit. Well, my grandmother never came to parents' night because she didn't drive, and she struggled with a lot of health issues, and she had the 5 of us at home. So my folder was always on my desk the next day. So I'm trying to rush in early to get it so that no one would notice that my parent was probably the only parent who didn't show up. And I overheard my teacher tell another teacher in the hallway, those parents don't care. They never come to anything. And I kind of choke up even today when I think about that, because 30 years later, the razor sharpness of that comment still bothers me. You know, I still see her standing there. I still smell the perfume she wore when she made that comment, because I was confused. How can you say that my grandmother doesn't care about me when just this morning I woke up and she had dough rolled out on the kitchen table and she had a soup can making biscuits for us to eat before we went to school. Every morning we had a hot breakfast. Every day we came home and our laundry was done, our house was taken care of, all of our needs were met. So for my teacher to say that my grandmother didn't care because she didn't come to a parent-teacher event was troubling for me, and I really didn't know what that meant or how to process that. So I've always been haunted by the idea that there's a perception that the level of commitment that a person has to a school directly relates to how much they care about their children. When I became a mother, not too long later, I was always very careful about that. I'm going to make sure I go to school, I'm going to make sure I'm active, I'm going to make sure I'm involved. I had my daughter when I was 17. I got pregnant in high school. It took everything in me to finish school. Everything in me, the support of my family, my community, my friends to get me through college. And I remember very carefully, there was an event happening at the school that I couldn't attend. And I was crippled by the fact that my daughter's teacher might make a comment about me the way a teacher had made a comment about my grandmother many years ago. And that just bothered me. I had just started a job. I was working second shift, the 3 to 11 shift. And I was in what they call the working test period. And in this working test period, you couldn't take any days off for anything. So I went back and forth. I have to go to the school, but if I take the day off, I'm going to lose this very good job that I've just secured. I didn't go to the event. And I struggled with that. I called a friend. I was calling around my aunt, my mother, my cousin. Can anybody go just so that my daughter will have somebody there so her teacher will know that her family cares about her? Today, I am a teacher. I'm happily married. My husband, we both are college educated, have amazingly active careers and work lives. My husband is a homicide detective. The hours for that are crazy, so he really has no set hours. And this new teacher life that I've entered into. And I still struggle with not being at coffee hour in the morning or not being at parents' events. Now here I am, the ideal family, 2-parent household, college educated, employed. This is what in my mind, I think the perfect family looks like. And still, I'm not attending events at school. I say all of that to say, the amount that a person enters a school building or the time that they spend engaged with the school does not directly connect to about whether the PTA is still relevant, whether the PTA is still necessary. I would say that my grandmother thinks you're relevant. My daughter thinks you're relevant. I think you're relevant. Because just because a person is not there or is not present doesn't mean that they don't have something to add to the conversation. No meaningful conversation about education. I don't care if it's standards, test scores, compensation, building facilities, school lunches can take place without the input of parents, families, and communities. So as a teacher, I carry that with me all the time. And I try to put structures in place so that no child will ever feel embarrassed in my classroom about the family they come from. That no parent will ever be ashamed of the amount of commitment they bring to the table. And no school will be a place where parents, families, students feel unwelcome. Not everybody either knows how, has the ability, or the time, energy, effort to put into what we expect as teachers. I get it. In a perfect world, in an ideal place, we would enter into a dialogue and have conversations where we're both supporting students, but people are supporting students in very different ways. And I think we have to remember that. If we want different results, then we have to do things differently. No longer can we put up a flyer that says we're having a meeting at the school on Thursday, please attend. That is not what parent engagement looks like. My grandmother would never attend that meeting. There was no bus in the neighborhood where we grew up, and she didn't drive. But it doesn't mean that she didn't care about it. It doesn't mean that she wasn't doing her part at home to support the education I was receiving at school. We have to look at this through a very different lens. In my school, I've developed programs where I am out in the community. I get it. I am so crippled by the fact that parents can't attend Parents' Night that I go the weeks leading up to Parents' Night to we have several community centers, and I have open air conversations is what I tell them. And I say to parents, I am in your neighborhood tonight. If you want to talk to me about your child, this is where I'll be. I have just started using social media as a platform. And in my district, they said, we don't want anyone using social media, but this is the world we live in. If we want to engage parents, if we want to connect with people, then we have to do it on their level with the skills and abilities that they possess. There is a very traditional way of And if we lived in a very traditional world with traditional children and traditional families, that would work. But when you work in a school and live in a world where you have students where the parents' English is not their first language, where you have students who are living in foster care, where you have students who are being raised by an aunt and grandmother, a cousin and uncle because the parent is incarcerated, or they're working at night and going to school in the morning. You have all these different dynamics. Then that structure that we have in place, where parents work from 7 to 3 and meetings take place at 5 on Thursday nights and kids go home to 2 parents all the time. If we continue to operate within those parameters, you will be talking to yourself because there's no My son asks me all the time, how come you never come to coffee hour? And I says, because I have to work. How come you gotta work all the time? Because you have to eat. Well, I don't eat that much. Because he still doesn't understand what that means. So I reach out to his teacher all the time, but that's because I know how to. Not everybody knows how to navigate this system. We use so many acronyms in education that a parent would need a translator to even understand the conversation. I'm the National Teacher of the Year. I say that because for anyone who doesn't know any better, they would think that I know about education. I'm very well versed. And just last week, I'm sitting at a conference and I'm turning to my colleagues, every third word, what does that mean? What are they talking about? LEA, what is happening right now? And I know, I am in the field, so imagine how a parent feels. Imagine how a grandparent feels with a 5th grade education who can cook anything without a cookbook, who's walking into school, having a conversation with people in a language that she doesn't understand, and nobody's stopping to explain it to her. Imagine how that made her feel. We cannot spend the last decade bashing this profession and then wondering why nobody wants to come in and talk to us. It just gets me so fired up. I live on a cul-de-sac, and we have a dog, and I'm like the worst dog owner ever because really, I just let the dog out in the morning because I'm tired. But she's a really good dog. All the kids love her, so she goes to all the houses, and the kids that are waiting for the bus, they pet her, and I'm like, send her home when she's done. And there's one house on my street. Everybody has this name. Yep. Get out! She's yelling at the dog, and I see her, so I step back thinking that maybe she'll think the dog got out, and I didn't let the dog out. What I noticed was, after a couple days, weeks, whatever, the dog visits everyone. When he gets to her house, off of the grass into the street, goes around her property to the next one. Even a dog knows not to go somewhere where they're not welcome. Even a dog knows not to continue to go somewhere where people don't treat them kindly. Please help me understand why a parent would want to continue to go to a school where they don't feel welcome, where they're not having good experiences, where there's negative interaction, and you're telling them that you value their input. Stop telling them, show them that you value their input. Over the next year, and perhaps for the last decade and throughout my career, I have operated in a way that would be respectful of my grandmother. I have always been mindful to frame my thoughts, my responses, my content as if I was speaking with or dealing with my grandmother. Because my grandmother loved us in a way that I cannot tell you about, but I know what it feels like. She couldn't articulate that, She couldn't verbalize that, but she showed us every day. So to exclude her from the conversation based on those things is not fair, it's not who we are, it's not what education is about. Be purposeful in your interaction.